Hello, welcome back to A Gospel of Peace. My name is Roger, and I appreciate you joining me for another week of God's Word and message and discovery into the Bible. This week we're going to start hitting on a kind of a message series based in Revelation. Okay, I'm currently doing a study through that for the next 8 weeks, so I figured it was a good opportunity to go ahead and incorporate that into these videos. So I hope you enjoy them. We're going to cover a lot of content. Today, however, we're going to kind of start out with just kind of a general overview of Revelation. We'll discover briefly the setting, the context in which it was written, and we're going to see why Revelation is actually necessary, based in Genesis. Now, for those of you who don't know, the book of Revelation, and it is Revelation, not Revelations, is also known as the Apocalypse of John in the Greek. All right. The John that they're talking about, there's a little bit of a debate onto what John is actually writing. Some believe it was one of the apostles when he was imprisoned on the island of Patmos. Others think it was another church leader who happened to be named John, also imprisoned on Patmos. So when we delve into Revelation, we don't really want to focus on too much who the writer is, because then that can get you doubting the prophecy itself. The fact is, it was an important man named John who was imprisoned for his beliefs, and he had received a message from God, and that message is detailed in the book of Revelation. So let's go over the setting. We're about 90-ish AD for the writing of the book of John, or the book of Revelation, rather. At this time, we have the passing of Emperor Nero around this time, and the rise of Domitian, who was a very, very cruel emperor who believed himself to be a god, essentially. By all accounts, this particular emperor was mad with power and would later be overthrown for his beliefs. In fact, his reign wasn't very long at all. Now, there are a couple things that we need to know. The first part of Revelation is kind of the general message. Christ is portrayed as standing in the midst of 7 golden candlesticks, and he's holding 7 stars in his hand. Those 7 golden candlesticks are churches that were in Asia Minor at the time, which is kind of cool, but there's also some subcontext in there. People believe that those 7 churches and the depictions of what they're going through also represent the 7 generations or 7 eras of the church since Christ's time. We'll delve into a little bit of both of those as the series goes on. Moving from the candlesticks, we have a view and an image of a scroll with 7 seals on it, which up until this point in John's vision, nobody in creation had been able to open this scroll. When John is witnessing this and hearing the laments of people, who is able to open the scroll, none are worthy, he starts to weep. But the angel reminds him that the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world has appeared and is now able to open these scrolls. So we then proceed to see the opening of the seals on the scroll, and each seal has a different thing associated with it. We'll delve into that a little bit through the series. The next we'll see is, before the opening of the final seal, is 7 trumpets that herald in different plagues and catastrophes across mankind and what those mean. And then we start seeing a lot of signs and imagery associated with the end times, and what to look for and what will be happening. And it's all in very vivid and yet beautiful imagery. Finally, we come to the bowls, and the bowls are the pouring out of God's wrath by another set of angels. And the culmination of the book of Revelation ends with New Jerusalem set down on the new earth, with God reigning among us, and Christ reigning among us, and his people living forever, enjoying the benefits of eternal life. Revelation, if we look at it, can be very daunting and very scary at first. Most readers actually push away from it. The imagery there for the first part reminds us of the brokenness of this world, and that everybody is bound to face hardship and trials and troubles at some point in this world. And a lot of people don't like being reminded of that. A lot of people also don't like being reminded of the glaring fact that only by following Christ are you not spared from these troubles, because Revelation does indicate that we will go through these, but that there's a reward for enduring and resting in your faith and relying on your faith and not succumbing to the temptations of the world. That reward is life eternal in the New Jerusalem, tasting of the tree of life. That in and of itself puts a stark contrast on the way people live. It forces you to look at, are you living for Christ? Are you living the way he said to live? Or are you like the church of Laodicea and are lukewarm and about to be spewed out? So Revelation is difficult in and of itself because it brings up a lot of questions about how I'm acting in relation to God. And is the imagery meant for now, in the future? Was it meant for the church at that time only? So it can be a difficult book. My hope is, with going through this series, that together we'll learn something new and interesting from Revelation. That by examining my own personal beliefs on it and the beliefs of other people and scholars, maybe we can find a good interpretation of what Revelation means. So again, this is not an answer series. I'm not here to tell you this is exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen. The whole book is built on imagery and symbolism, so nothing's going to be nailed down concrete. It's all going to be based on the imagery and symbolism and our interpretation of what that imagery and symbolism means based on the biblical context. So if you're watching these for answers in Revelation, I'm sorry, we're not going to have any. At best, I can promise you'll get more questions. But we will narrow down some facts that we can narrow down. Fact number one being, Christ is the only one that will come back for us who are sealed in his name, to give us the rewards that we have earned through our life of service. Revelation is clear. We will be judged on our deeds. So if you're a Christian person and you've been living a life like a hooligan, there will be a time of judgment for that. If you are living like Mother Teresa, your rewards may be great, but there will be a time when that comes. There will be a time when all of our tears are wiped away. That's a promise. The other thing it promises is that for those who follow the world and the beast and Satan's deception, there will be a time of separation. And the imagery used in Revelation is time in the fire, the lake of fire that smells of sulfur. I would encourage you that if you question whether or not you might be in that category, you seriously watch the videos on salvation, on the fruits, and maybe pray about your relationship and where it's at. So why is the book of Revelation the necessary conclusion of God's plan? See, God started out a plan long time ago. It was man, woman, perfect in a garden with all of his creation. We fell. God didn't use a backup plan. He knew it would happen. So he set in motion events that would redeem us and ultimately defeat the deceiver, the one who tried to usurp his throne. Revelation is that culmination of events. It is the cyclical pattern of death and destruction and the effects on the world that it takes and on the human race that it takes, that all of our kicking and screaming against God does have a price, and that those who choose to side with God, those who honor him and serve him, they are the ones that will inherit the renewal, the return to the garden or the city of Jerusalem, however you look at it. They will return to paradise. And that will be the conclusion. Mostly that'll be the conclusion because that was God's original intent for us. And whatever God intends to have done does get done at one point or another. So we should really always remember that Revelation is a necessary conclusion to the events that were set off in Genesis. So with that in mind, let's look back as to why the events in Genesis even had to take place. So if we look back at Genesis 1:1, God said, "Let there be light." Boom. Or, he starts off very clearly in the creation process. Now, if you all have a Bible, please look at it or follow along. That's great. If not, that's also fine. Now, I'm not going to read all of Genesis chapter 1 or anything like that, but I want to point out a couple highlights in Genesis chapter 1, which makes the dramatic scenes that play out throughout the course of the Bible maybe make a little bit more sense. So, of course, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay? Now, over each day, through 7 days of creation, God ends the day by reflecting on what he has created or speaking a benediction over what he has created. It depends on your view on as to what you believe. Now, at the end of day 1, God looked and said it was good, what he had created. Now, the word used good in this context is a Hebrew word, tab. Looks like T-O-B, okay? Although the Hebrew letters are a little not quite like that. But the implication of the word tab, while it does mean pleasing in one context, it also means opposite of evil. So when we go through the creation story, each item that God creates, God says it is tab, it is good. Now, he does this over and over and over again. When he creates the birds, it's good. When he creates the animals, it's good. When he creates the seas, it's good. The land, it's good. The vegetation, it's all good. When God said, let there be lights in the skies and in the vaults, he did all that, and God said it was good. And that was the fourth day. Then on the fifth day, the waters teemed with fish and the birds in the sky. And God created the great sea creatures and the living things in the waters and had them moving in it and all the winged animals according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, be fruitful and multiply. And this was the fifth day. And on the sixth day, he produced living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures moving along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind, and it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kind, the livestock according to their kind, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kind. And God saw it was good. Now I want you to notice this is the sixth day. God's talking about all the creatures he made, and he still calls them good. But the sixth day is not finished. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, and over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image, and in the image of mankind, in the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So God blessed them, said, be fruitful and multiply, and increase in number to fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant and on the face of the whole earth, and every tree and fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of all the earth and all the birds in the sky and the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath and life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. Then God stops. And God saw all that he had made, and said it was very good. And that was the sixth day. Now, I find it interesting in the book of Revelation, or in the book of Genesis here in that first chapter, that God makes it a point to call out everything in creation good as he created it. But when it comes to man, he stops. He does not say we are good. Instead, he takes a step back, looks over all of creation, and comments on all of creation as being very good, which is in the Hebrew moed tab. Now, I'm probably butchering the translation on that, but when that combination is used together, moed tab, that means very pleasing. So that is indicating of how he felt about all of creation. And it's in that instance, when we look at that he makes that comment about how pleased he is about all of creation that he's done at the sixth day, that we can look back at the translation for tab throughout the other 5 days and the first part of the sixth day, and see that when he says that it is good, he's actually referring to their absence of evil. See, creation in and of itself is not evil. It's good. It's designed to function and perform the will of God as he calls it to do. But with man, he would not call us good, nor would he call us evil. He gave us free will. He gave us choice. So with us having the choice to be either good or evil, he would not comment. Because if he comments, then we would have no choice but to obey God, which means later when he says you can eat of any fruit in the garden except for the fruit from the tree of the fruit of life, or the fruit from the tree of life, and the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we wouldn't have been able to disobey because we would have been branded as good, as only able to obey. Because the definition of evil at this time would have been anything that goes against the will of God. That's why when we look in other prophetic scriptures, we see the struggle between Lucifer and God. And the problem that they had was about Lucifer not willing to accept God's rule. And that his pride boasted his own ego to the point that he thought he would be a better God. So he was willing to disobey God. That made him evil. And that's why he was cast out. So we're given the free will, the choice to choose to be good or evil. God does this intentionally because with free will, we can choose to love him and obey him, or we can choose to disobey him. This is what sets the scene for the whole narrative of the Bible. Our choices dictate whether or not we are able to partake in the final outcome of Revelation. In that 22nd chapter, when we're going to see the new heaven and the new earth restored, and the city brought down from heaven, and people living in that city rejoicing and worshiping God and living our lives to the fullest without disease, without death, without worry, without fear, without a tear in our eye. All that is possible by the choices that we made, that right to choose that God gave us from the beginning. God set it up from the beginning for Revelation to be the outcome. You see, my friends, when we're talking about God and his sovereignty, he's from everlasting to everlasting. He's seen the outcome. He knew our choices. That doesn't mean that you don't have a choice in what you do, but he knows the decisions you're going to make. He knows how they're going to weigh out. He's pleading with you to change your choice, to choose the option that is best for you, not best for your comfort. God intends for us to choose life. In Deuteronomy, when he's talking to the people about the blessings and the cursing, he encourages them to choose life, therefore. In the Gospels, Christ isn't commanding people to follow him. He's giving them a choice. Follow me and you'll live. Take up your cross, follow me. To the rich man he says, go sell off those things you own. Give all you have to the poor and follow me. God is simple when it comes to what he desires from each of us. Just follow him. As we go through Revelation, we're going to see the outcomes and the choices that are made and what happens based on those choices. Again, choice was given us in the beginning when God refused to call us good or evil. He just called us into existence. So I hope this encourages you to see where Revelation takes us, what the outcome of choice is, and what options you have before you. I'm encouraged and excited about this series. I promise it won't be so dry as it may seem at this video. If you follow me on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button down there and the little bell icon so you'll be notified when the next video comes out. In the meantime, God bless you each, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.